If you've been following the PGA Tour closely these last few days, you probably felt that weird mix of excitement and concern that only golf can create sometimes. Because right now, two different stories are unfolding at the same time, and somehow they both seem connected to one bigger moment happening on the tour. On one side, we suddenly saw one of the biggest stars in the entire sport pull out of a tournament right when things were starting to heat up. Not because he was playing badly, actually the opposite, but because something unexpected happened behind the scenes that forced a really tough decision. And on the other side, that same situation has now sparked a pretty strong reaction about one of the toughest setups on the PGA Tour calendar, raising real questions about whether things may have gone a little too far this time. And the crazy part is, all of this is happening just days before one of the most important tournaments of the entire season. So now fans are wondering, is this just a small bump in the road, or could it actually affect what happens at the tour's biggest stage this week? Because if you're a PGA Tour fan like me, you know moments like this can shift the entire storyline of a tournament before the first tee shot is even hit. But before we break down everything that's going on here, real quick, if you enjoy talking PGA Tour golf with real fans who follow this tour week after week, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This channel is brand new. We're trying to reach our first 10,000 subscribers, and if you love the PGA Tour as much as we do, you're definitely in the right place. So now that we can talk openly about it, the player at the center of all this is Rory McIlroy. And honestly, when the news first dropped over the weekend, it caught a lot of fans off guard. Because Rory wasn't struggling at the Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill. In fact, he was right in the mix. He opened the tournament with rounds of 72 and 68, putting himself in a tie for 9th place heading into the weekend. Anyone who watches Bay Hill knows that's a great position to be in, especially on a course where Rory has had success before. It really felt like he was setting himself up for a charge on Saturday and Sunday. But then Saturday morning came, and suddenly the news hit that Rory McIlroy was withdrawing from the tournament before the 3rd round. And the reason? A back injury that showed up during his pre-round workout in the gym. Now, if you've followed Rory's career for a long time, you know that back issues are always something golfers have to take seriously, especially in the modern era where the golf swing has become such an explosive, powerful movement. These guys are generating insane speed, and the lower back takes a lot of that stress. According to reports that came out afterward, Rory tried to warm up and see if he could still go, but it just kept getting worse. Golf journalist Rex Hoggard, speaking on the Golf Channel podcast with Rex and Lav, explained what he had heard from people inside Rory's camp. And what he said was actually pretty interesting. He mentioned that someone close to Rory's team told him Rory tried to warm up and test it, but the more swings he made, the more uncomfortable the back started to feel. And that's when the decision was made to step away. Now here's the key part. According to Hoggard, the level of concern inside Rory's camp is actually pretty low. His feeling was that this was more of a tweak in the back, not something catastrophic. In fact, Hoggard even said that if this tournament hadn't been played the week before the Players' Championship, Rory might have actually tried to play through it. But when you're staring at what many players call the 5th major just days away, risking a bigger injury simply doesn't make sense. And honestly, that's probably the smartest decision he could have made. Because if there's one tournament outside the majors that players circle on the calendar every year, it's the Players' Championship at TPC Sawgrass.
And here's another important detail. This week, Rory isn't just playing there, he's the defending champion. So protecting his health heading into that event was clearly the priority. And if you're a Rory fan, there's actually another reason to feel optimistic here. The last time he dealt with a back issue like this was before the Tour Championship in 2023. And what happened then? He played through it at Eastlake, still managed to finish tied for 4th, and then went on to play a huge role in Luke Donald's European team winning the Ryder Cup at Marco Simone. So Rory has shown before that he can bounce back quickly from something like this. But at the same time, anyone who follows golf knows that back injuries are tricky. They can disappear quickly, or they can linger if you push them too hard. which is exactly why the big question now is simple. How will his body respond this week at TPC Sawgrass? Because while the early signs suggest this might not be serious, the timing couldn't be more sensitive. And just when fans were starting to feel relieved that this might just be a precautionary withdrawal, something else happened. Rory didn't just talk about the injury, he also started talking about what might have caused it. And that's where the story suddenly takes a very different turn, leading straight into a pretty strong criticism aimed directly at the PGA Tour itself. And trust me, what he said about the course setup at Bay Hill is something that's already sparking a lot of debate around the golf world. But that is the part we need to talk about next. So just when fans were starting to process the injury itself, Rory McIlroy added another layer to the story. And this is where things got a little more controversial. Because shortly after withdrawing from the Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill Club and Lodge, Rory didn't just talk about the pain in his back. He actually pointed to something he believes may have contributed to it: the course setup. Now, anyone who watches this event every year knows Bay Hill has always been one of the toughest stops on the PGA Tour. It's supposed to be demanding. It's one of the flagship tournaments on the schedule and carries the legacy of Arnold Palmer, so the test of golf is always going to be serious. But according to Rory, this year it might have crossed a line. He described the setup as borderline excessive, and that's a pretty strong statement coming from one of the biggest voices in the game. Rory explained that the combination of firm fairways, extremely thick rough, and very firm greens created situations where players were constantly forced to hit recovery shots from heavy lies or awkward stances. And when that happens round after round over 4 days, the physical toll can really start to build. He said that when you're trying to power the ball out of deep rough or hold firm greens with long irons, you end up making more aggressive, explosive swings. And that's exactly the type of motion that can stress the lower back. In Rory's words, when you're constantly forced into those situations, that's when things can go wrong physically. And if you look at the way the course was playing last week, it's not hard to understand what he meant. Several holes at Bay Hill were especially brutal. Take the par 4 8th hole for example. It often plays straight into the wind, forcing players to hit long irons or hybrids into a narrow green surrounded by thick rough. Missed a fairway there, and suddenly you're hacking out just trying to survive. Then there's the par 3 17th, one of the most intimidating holes on the course. Water guards the green, the putting surface is incredibly firm, and historically it produces some of the highest scores of the entire tournament. And of course, the finishing hole, the par 4 18th, which demands both distance and precision. Players have to hit a tee shot over water and then attack a green protected by bunkers and heavy rough. Now, combine all of that with swirling winds, and suddenly players are constantly manufacturing shots, hitting out of thick lies and swinging harder than usual just to control the ball. From Rory's perspective, that combination may have contributed to the strain that led to those lower back spasms. And that's why this conversation has quickly grown bigger than just one injury. Because when a player like Rory McIlroy, one of the most respected voices on the PGA Tour, questions whether a course setup might be too demanding, people start paying attention. But the biggest issue right now isn't really the debate about Bay Hill, it's what this all means for this week. Rory admitted himself that the timing couldn't be worse. With the Players' Championship at TPC Sawgrass just around the corner, his focus right now is simple: get healthy and see how the back responds over the next few days. He made it very clear that while the Players is one of the biggest events on the entire PGA Tour calendar, he's not going to take any risks if the back doesn't feel right. And that's a huge storyline, because if Rory ultimately decides not to play, it would be one of the most significant absences in the field. We're talking about one of the most recognizable players in the sport, a perennial contender in elite tournaments,
and the defending champion of the event. So now the entire golf world is watching closely to see how this injury develops over the next few days. Will he recover in time to defend the title? Or will one of the toughest course setups on the PGA Tour calendar end up sidelining one of its biggest stars right before the tour's flagship event? That question alone has suddenly become one of the biggest storylines heading into the Players' Championship this week. And when you step back and look at these two stories together, they actually say a lot about the current moment on the PGA Tour. On one side, you have a superstar like Rory McIlroy making the smart decision to protect his body ahead of one of the most important tournaments of the year. On the other side, you have a serious conversation starting about how demanding some tournament setups are becoming, and whether that physical toll on players is starting to push the limits. For fans, it creates this strange mix of emotions, because of course we want to see the toughest courses in the world challenge the best players on the planet. But at the same time, nobody wants to see the biggest names in the sport sidelined right before massive events. And that's why the next few days are going to be incredibly interesting. If Rory shows up at TPC Sawgrass healthy and ready to defend his title, this whole situation might quickly turn into just a small scare. But if the back doesn't cooperate, then suddenly the storyline of the Players' Championship changes in a big way. And as fans of the PGA Tour, we'll all be watching very closely to see how it unfolds. And now I'm really curious to hear from you. Do you think Rory made the right call withdrawing from Bay Hill to protect himself for the Players? Or do you think course setups like that are just part of the challenge at this level? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is exactly the kind of golf fans love having. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel PGA Tour Today. The channel is brand new and we're trying to reach our first 10,000 subscribers. So if you're a real PGA Tour fan who enjoys honest golf conversations like this, your support would mean a lot. Thanks for watching, and let's see what happens at the Players' Championship this week.